welcome back, listeners, to the BizBlend podcast where business meets personal growth in authentic, raw, and real conversations. I'm your host Sana, and in today's episode, we are diving into the evolving world of last mile delivery, where technology, efficiency, and human connection intersect. And joining me is Chris Heffernan, the visionary founder and CEO of DLIVRD without the E, a white label catering delivery platform operating in nearly 170 markets across the US and Canada. Listeners, Chris is a tech forward logistics expert who started his journey back in 2011 after spotting a sticker on a cheesesteak shop window, proof that inspiration can actually hit when you least expect it. And today, his company uses AI to optimize delivery routes, elevate driver experiences, and minimize environmental impact, while also staying rooted in the human side of service. So, we'll explore what it really means to automate what you can and also humanize what's important, and how this balance is shaping the future of delivery services. So with that, Chris, welcome to the show, and it's such an honor to have you with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, Chris, before we talk about the topic, your journey with that sticker on a window, that is really inspiring and really, surprising. So can you take us back to that moment and share how exactly it led to the creation of Delivered?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was on vacation. I'm from the Philadelphia area. I was on vacation in Florida. And being from the Philadelphia area, we have a culinary delight. It is a Philadelphia cheesesteak, and everybody knows about it. And there's a right way to make a cheesesteak and a wrong way. So when I was on vacation, I saw this cheesesteak place and it said it was Big Al's Philly cheesesteaks. And I was like, I need to make sure that it's a real Philly cheesesteak. Being from the Philly area, like we have a certain way we like it. If you see mayonnaise or like green peppers on a cheesesteak, that's a sandwich. That's not a cheesesteak.
Okay.
And Big Al's was Al, and he was from South Philadelphia, got tired of the cold and the snow in the winters, and moved down to Florida and opened up this little sandwich shop, and, it was a real Philly cheesesteak. He even overnighted his rolls from a bread manufacturer in the Philadelphia area to make sure that it was like an authentic cheesesteak.
Okay.
And on his little window where you ordered your cheesesteaks from, it said, "We deliver with delivery dudes." And this is before DoorDash, before Uber Eats. Grubhub existed, but it was only for if you had your own drivers already, mostly Chinese food or pizza places. And I asked Big Al, I'm like, "What is delivery dudes?" And he's like, "It's these guys, these dudes that deliver for the restaurants on the strip." And there was nothing like that in suburban Philadelphia where I was from, and I was like, I would totally pay $3 to get a cheesesteak delivered instead of Chinese food or pizza when I really want it. And, I took that idea and ran with it just from that little sticker. Had I not driven down that street, not seen that cheesesteak, and not been like a fanatical Philadelphia person who wanted to see if it was a real cheesesteak or not, I would have never went down this path.
Wow. 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 I mean, I really, it's so inspiring to hear stories like this, that begin with real life inspiration. And definitely, I guess this is such a great lesson to actually understand the problem before we come up with a solution. Because often, we see there are solutions, but are these solutions actually addressing a real problem for the people out there or for the market out there? So that is such an interesting story and journey behind Delivered, Chris.
Yeah, and it's, you hear a lot in business like product market fit, and that
Right.
sounds like super complicated, right? And it's exactly what you said. Is this a solution to a problem exists, or is this a solution to a problem people care about? And if the answer is yes, then there's a journey to be had there.
Yep, yep, absolutely. Okay, now interesting. When I was reading through your intro, very interesting quote or phrase that you talk about automating what you can and also humanizing what's important. So, how does this philosophy play out in the day to day operations at Delivered?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that quote came up. It's always been something that we kind of did, and
Mhm,
I was on a podcast talking, and they're like, "What are one of the things that you would recommend to entrepreneurs starting their business or growing their tech startup?" And
mhm,
it was that line: "Automate what you can, so you can humanize what's important." And it's important that came out like Delivered itself started in 2018. My first, that aha moment with the cheesesteak was 2011. Pivoted business models in 2018. That's what became Delivered. And from 2018 to 2020, we focused on office catering. And obviously, with the pandemic starting in March of 2020, the business really slowed down. We were ramping up so fast in January, February of 2020 with no automation. There
mhm,
was no way we would have been able to continue to scale the business. It was me and one other employee in the office coordinating drivers in 20 different markets across the United States.
mhm,
And that slowdown from the pandemic allowed us to start focusing on automation. I don't know how to code. I never learned that. I can watch YouTube videos.
okay.
So we started automating a lot of stuff on Zapier and connected with an automations engineer on Upwork. And that is where our automation story began, was finding ways to take care of the little things that need to get done, like assigning the orders or matching the orders to the appropriate drivers, data entry. So me and my small team of, one, and then shortly after that, two other people could focus on connecting with the drivers that are using the platform, reaching out to the restaurants, and having those meaningful interactions. In a world of technology, clients have so many options on who they can use. In the gig world, drivers have so many options on where they can spend their time delivering. So making sure to humanize those interactions is huge, but we couldn't do that if we were spending all of our time copy and pasting delivery instructions or clicking a sign on a computer screen to send an order to a driver 1,000 times a day.
Mm, wow. We often say that with AI or automation, as we scale, we often risk losing the human element. So how do you guard against that, Chris? With Zapier and then Upwork, how do you exactly bring that human element into this?
Yeah, the human element, we call it the real estate theory. So, if you've ever been given a card from a real estate agent, their
Mhm.
picture is on that card.
Yep.
And the reason they do that is because it makes it harder for you to throw that card in the trash, because that would be like throwing a picture in the
Mhm.
garbage. The human element to it. So that's what we try and do, is make these personal connections with any of the stakeholders. And the stakeholder could be a client, it could be the end customer receiving the delivery, or the driver doing the delivery. So automation and AI isn't here to replace that. It's here to enhance that. It allows our account executives, now we're past that point where it's me or one or two other employees. We have about 87 employees spread across 4 countries, and it gives them the time to be able to work with the clients to find out their needs and not spend time on making sure that driver A has delivery bag B to make client Z happy. That's all automatable. And the real way to safeguard against pushing the human element out is this simple like line: if this, then that. If you can quantify the results or your desired action by saying, if this happens, then do that, that is a perfect automatable task. But anything that doesn't boil down to the if this, then that is not something that is poised for automation. You can't, if I say this, then the person would say that. That's not a natural conversational flow. So if you don't land in that if this then that, then that's the perfect place for a human to jump in and for a human to make a meaningful interaction.
Mm. And I really loved how you mentioned drivers as stakeholders in there, because often I guess we forget in food tech or maybe such kind of industries that how in especially the last mile delivery, the delivery people or the drivers, they're so instrumental because they are there at the front. So I really, really love that. And Chris, let's talk about the industry, last mile delivery. From your perspective, especially post pandemic, how has the demand for last mile delivery changed? And where do you see it going probably in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, it has definitely changed post-pandemic when you look at consumer behavior as far as even curbside pickup, delivery, all these things have shifted with people wanting it and wanting it now and kind of becoming more okay with less interaction. I needed a piece for a desk in my office. I looked at Home Depot, I looked at Lowe's, I checked Best Buy. Nobody had it, so I had to have it ordered online, and it showed up to my office 2 days later. So, retailers and businesses have adapted to this as well. It's less costly to keep stuff in a centralized warehouse than to have it spread out a bunch of through a bunch of retail.
Mhm.
And I don't see that going anywhere. I see more of the Amazon model,
Yeah.
distribution hubs and sending it out.
Yeah.
And anybody can really get into that. We call it like a hub and spoke model. So I see I see last mile really developing into different like verticals in the restaurant space. I
Mhm.
see it as hybrid delivery where restaurants have their own drivers for peak periods like lunch and dinner to keep their best and most loyal customers happy. But then orders going too far or orders between their peak periods are handled by third party fleets like your DoorDash, your Uber Direct. And then for the general parcel space, I see a lot of that hub and spoke model where a courier will run a route and pick up items from a bunch of retailers, whether it be local or national, bring them back to a centralized hub where they're divided and then delivered out the next day by gig fleet drivers like your Amazon Flex. And that, of course, is all without even thinking about drone delivery or autonomous vehicle delivery. It's just gonna get a lot more micro and a lot more granular. And where we wanna position ourself at Delivered is more of those high quality earning opportunities. There's no shortage of demand to deliver for $1.50, on an Amazon route or Temu, high volume, low pay. We wanna focus on making sure that that customer is happy. We're talking about the drivers being the most important part of a platform. Everybody remembers if the driver's rude or drops their food or leaves the package at the wrong place. It doesn't matter if you had the best online ordering experience and the product was great. What do you remember? That last touch point, and that last touch point is that driver. So paying them the least possible is not the answer.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. And my next question is definitely on this, and I think this is globally universal across, even in a country like India. And there's a growing sentiment that gig workers are being exploited by delivery apps. So, how does Delivered differentiate itself in terms of driver empowerment and fairness?
Yeah, that's a great question because there is definitely no shortage of platforms and businesses ready to take advantage of the gig workers. And it's one of the biggest things that we fight now. It's not us against other apps or, us against our competitors. It's a gig worker's impression of the gig platforms. And it all starts with transparency. In a lot of the gig platforms, they'll send jobs out and just say, "This is where you're picking up from, but I'm not gonna tell you where you're going. You're gonna earn between 7 and $10, but not firm up on a value, and, not give you all the information. Doesn't tell you if you're going upstairs, downstairs, how big the order is, how small the order is." And all these apps want the advantage of being able to say, "No, no, they're independent contractors," which means they're technically little businesses, but they don't want to give them the information to make business decisions. Like, would you as a tech platform sign up for a customer that says, "I'll pay you between these two amounts, but I'm only going to give you half the information"? No, you can't make a business decision that way. So the way we fight it, the way we encourage all platforms that use gig work is transparency. Tell the worker, tell the driver where they're going, what they're doing, exactly how much they're going to get paid, and commit to paying them that. If the worker carves out time on your app and not one of the other 7 delivery apps they have on their phone, and something changes with that order that pays it less, you should still pay it the same amount. They could have taken another job that earned more money. Will you make a little bit less on that job? Yeah, but you're doing the right thing. So those are really the key components of it. Like, be transparent and, do what you say you're going to do.
Okay. And also into this, with your use of green technologies, what role does sustainability play in Delivered's future? I mean, how do you balance eco consciousness with operational efficiency? Because, it can be it could put a huge dent on the cost, fixed costs. So, how do you balance that?
Yeah, and it's a delicate balance, right? I mean, part of it is utilizing and leveraging AI to allow for smarter routes. We look at, I think FedEx had done a case study years ago that in Manhattan, if they don't turn left, it saves them a ton of money and in turn, a bunch of fuel costs and CO2 emissions.
Yeah.
So when we look at planning a driver's route, we look at these kinds of things. What is the most conscious way that we can do it and make the least amount of impact? And that's not always possible, but we do it where we can. And then through a partnership with Ecology, which is a UK-based B corporation, we carbon offset all the miles driven by our gig fleet. So we know the driver's vehicle, we know what type it is. We utilize an API to send that information over to Ecology. And then through tree planting, rainforest restoration, water reclamation projects, windmill projects, we offset the carbon impact from our deliveries. And I think last year we set off enough to, like, if we put it into like a quantifiable amount, it would offset 1,250 homes electricity or carbon emissions, for a full year. So over 1,000 homes for a full year worth of carbon emissions we offset through all these different projects. So it's a combination of smart tech and then same thing with the drivers just doing the right thing.
No. I really love that you quoted the FedEx case study because I want to mention that. Great, great, Chris. So, finally, if our listeners would like to explore more about Delivered and they would like to connect with you as well, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, learn about Delivered and what we do is our website. It's DLIVRD.io, delivered without the E's. And then to connect with me or, learn more about my journey, all my social media, my LinkedIn, my Instagram, everything's open. I'm very video forward. I love storytelling. And it would be like LinkedIn or Instagram slash the Hef, THEHEFF, on LinkedIn. And on the others, it's slash the Hef, THEHEFF 215, which is the area code in Philadelphia. Just more of that Philadelphia roots, just like the cheesesteak.
Lovely. I'll make sure to mention all the details in the show notes. And Chris, thank you so much for sharing your journey, the innovations you are doing, and also your heart behind the hustle. And it's really, really clear that Deliver is not just a logistics platform, it's definitely a company with a soul built on a blend of smart tech and real human touch. So, thank you so much for what you're doing.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me tell a little bit of the story.
And to all of my listeners, if this episode made you think about the future of delivery, automation, AI, or how we maintain connection in a high speed world, share it with a friend or a colleague. And as always, keep blending bold business with a grounded mindset. Thank you.